Hello, everyone. My name is Eric Zinger, and I am here today with candidate for Greenberg Central School District Board of Education, Chris Valin. Chris, thank you for joining with me today.
Thank you.
So for everyone, just a reminder, the vote for Board of Education is on May 21st. That's from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. at Woodlands Middle High School, 475 West Hartsdale Avenue. Please make sure to come out and vote. We have 5 candidates who are currently running for 3 seats, so every vote is going to count. And if you would like to vote on the budget as well, that is your opportunity to do so as well. So a reminder, May 21st is the day to vote, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. So with that, this is going to be a series of one-on-one interviews that the Hartsdale Neighbors Association is doing with the candidates for Board of Education. We've reached out to all of the candidates. We hope that all 5 candidates will participate, and you'll see these videos on our YouTube page and on Facebook as well. So Chris, thank you for joining us today. Our first question, just to give people a chance, if they didn't catch the PTA interview or they're not familiar with you, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your experience, and why you're running for Board of Education.
Well, my name is Chris Valin, or Christine Valin, and my husband Agustin and I moved here 18 years ago from Madrid, Spain. We have 2 boys, one of whom is a 2023 Woodlands graduate, and the other is currently at Woodlands, and they've been attending Greenberg School since kindergarten. I I have been attending PTA and school board functions for 13 years, I would say. The bulk of it as a parent. I've only been on the board. This is my first time running for re-election, so only 3 of that has been as a board member. But prior to that, I attended nearly every committee: the fiscal planning, the facilities committee, the community engagement communications, education committees. So I've been pretty well versed in school district goings on for a very long time. I was part of a core group of parents who advocated for fiscal equity with our local legislators a number of years ago when we had a large petition drive, and we actually had legislation sponsored by local legislators, and it unfortunately didn't pass. I have been involved in the recertification process at the International Baccalaureate program in our schools. I've been a past PTA board member and president. I ran the book fairs for many years. I've been involved integrally in the schools for a very long time, so I'm pretty familiar with the issues and the community overall. And as far as why I'm running for the board again, I'd like to just continue the advocacy that's become part and parcel of my life and my belief in this district and the kids who live here.
Okay, thank you. So obviously you've been on the board for 1 term so far. In running for your next term, what are the areas that you would like to most focus on improving in GCSD, whether that's taking something that's not really a strength of the district and turning it into a strength, or building on something that we're already doing really well? What would you say are the areas that you plan to focus on in your second term?
Overall, I think we're on the right path. I can say that when my oldest was in kindergarten and we did not yet have a full International Baccalaureate district, back then we were saying, hey, why aren't we K through 12 with this program? I'm glad to see that we're going. So I want to continue a lot of the programs that we have. As far as strengthening, I think there's ongoing conversations. We're in this phase, and I honestly don't know if it's post-COVID or the devices, but there's a real need to focus on some of the social emotional behaviors and skills in our students. I think that's an area that we've been working on for the last few years. We've had district-wide professional development on that, but I think that's something we want to continue to keep our eye on. I think I'd like to see some more interdisciplinary work with the IB program, and overall we need to do that with a tight focus on our fiscal ability to meet all needs of all the students. Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that I think I've noticed and people have asked me to ask about is that over the last 3 or 4 years, I think there's been significant turnover at all levels of GCSD. Obviously, we have a new superintendent, but there's been a number of administrators that have turned over. There's director of technology, I know has been something that's turned over. I know Dr. Macaluso is recently, going to be ending his employment at the end of the year. Do you think that what steps would you take to provide more stability or make sure that we're retaining our best talent and ensuring that there's stability in the district?
Retaining talent and ensuring stability in the district. Well, first of all, staff, there's turnover for multiple reasons. And of course, on the board, at the board level, we don't have, we're one, each one of us is one of seven. And our control over a lot of those issues is pretty limited. As far as hiring decisions, we're limited to, approving or not approving recommendations for hire. Same thing with tenure. And those recommendations do come from our superintendent. So as far, I can't address obviously as far as why specific people or positions are vacant. But we are very concerned about staff burnout, and we do appreciate the feedback we get from staff as far as concerns they have and supports they may need. And those are things that we look at, and if we are able to address them, we can address them. Yeah. So you're just providing additional professional development if that's one of the issues, and any other supports.
Okay. What would you say, whether it's about a misconception about being on the Board of Education or a misconception about the school district in general, what would you say is one of a misconception that's out there that you would like to either correct or make sure people have the proper information, whether it's about the budget or what it's like to be on the Board of Education or anything at all? Is there anything that you think it's important that, hey, people might think it's X, but really when you look into it, it's more something else?
Sure. Well, first, just generally, I know there's people out there who think that the Board of Education is paid. That may be true in some states, but here locally, it's a volunteer gig, just like what you're doing and what the PTA does. It's just a different organization, a different level. So there's that. I can also say that the board works as a unit. There's 7 of us on the board. We each get 1 vote. There's no one vote that outweighs another. So it's important that we all share information equally. And once a vote happens, we're one unit. We're all supporting it and moving forward with the decision that's made. Regarding the budget, a lot of the budget is kind of fixed by our contracts, by legal requirements from the state or the federal government, and a very small percentage of the budget is fungible, is things we can move around from here to there. And I think that's a misunderstanding. So when it's very difficult to slash the budget, but you have to be very careful when you're allocating the bits that are able to be used. And so we have many, many, many needs, but we're a small school district, and the financial times as they are, we have to be very cognizant of the fact that not everyone who lives in Greenburgh sends their kids to the schools, and that therefore they have other expenses for their children elsewhere, and we need to be using our dollars to the best of our ability. And it's everybody says that we can do XYZ when you're on the board, but when you only have a limited amount of funds, you have to pick and choose carefully.
Mm-hmm. And I know the district recently passed, for the first time in quite a long period of time, a capital referendum, a bond referendum. Can you talk to me about the planning that went into that, the plans that we have for that money, future plans for additional referendums, and how because that's something that's relatively new for Greenberg. That's something that I know there was obviously the major bond that failed, but even prior to that, it had been a very long time before anything even came up for a vote. So can you talk a little bit about maybe the capital needs of the district and what your focuses and priorities are going to be for obviously what's a limited spend ability of everyone,
Mhm. You alluded to a bond proposal that was put forth a number of years ago. It was a very large bond and the community did not support it. Um, so what we're doing now is, we have old buildings, we have these needs, we have space needs, we have improvements we'd like to make rooms that we have a little more functional for the 21st century. And the lesson learned out of that bond failure was that the community needs to be listened to. So to that end, I think the board, even prior to my joining, expanded a couple of different committees and invited everyone who lives in Greenberg to join, so that we're hearing more of those voices. Fiscal planning and facilities, they used to be very small board only committees, and now it's a district committee, which means anybody who wants to join can send their name to the board and they can, you have to be approved, but we don't turn anyone away. So we're hearing those voices, and those voices are counting because they have a vote when we're making decisions in that committee. So that's the lesson learned out of that. From there, we've been trying to prioritize funding for our, you're talking about facilities appropriately. We got the money from the federal government due to COVID, and the advice at the time was try to use it for non-recurring costs. And we use 95% of that money or more for non-recurring costs to upgrade our ventilation systems in our buildings to improve the health of our buildings and therefore our students and staff. And that's going to benefit us for the long run. And I think we were very smart to do that. There were some districts that did not do that, and they're now in extreme fiscal distress.
It's non-recurring costs because it's non-recurring revenue. So
exactly. So I'm thrilled we did that way. So those phase one projects are complete or 99% complete. And in addition to that, we've prioritized things like that, the RJ Bailey Auditorium is another project that we accelerated a little bit more so we can get the asbestos work done during the summer instead of waiting, a whole year. And although it seems like it's been a long time, it's actually moved faster than otherwise, because a lot of the delays in our projects are due to approvals that are needed up in New York State Education Department. So that's another thing we're doing. And we targeted that because although it's an auditorium and you might think, oh, that's fluff, that's extracurricular. No, every single student uses that on a regular basis in that building. So it was an important project for us to begin and see through. What else have we done? In addition to the project you just alluded to, the bond is well, in between there was a project to do some roofs at Highview, and there was a couple other things in there. I'm blanking right now. Should have had my list here. Do I? Maybe not. And then the project that we just approved in the fall is to do the roofs on all the other buildings. And the roofs have been an issue for 10, 15, since I started being involved in the district, but it was always something that was put off. And, it's time to pay the piper and get this done because we have leaks in our buildings. So we're doing the roofs, we're upgrading the track, and we're doing that because we're getting money from Andrea Stewart Cousins, I believe, through a fund that she had access to. So we're getting some help with the track there. And we're also doing improvements to our tennis courts. So we're doing some of the needs, and because we got money from other sources, we added in a couple of the wants. And there's a number of other things in the project list, but we're trying to look at it in a systematic way and identifying needs versus wants. And there's this thing called the Building Condition Survey, which lists the status of our buildings and identifies priorities. A lot of it has to do with what you legally need to have as far as, ADA accessibility and different upgrades that have been grandfathered in. And now we're making sure that we're actually doing this. Okay, so for example, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place with this. For example, because of the age of our campus, some of our fire hydrant line issues had gotten grandfathered in, but now we're acknowledging that it's a serious safety issue. We should have appropriate water pressure and additional functioning fire hydrants in case of emergency. So that's another project that's ongoing. I think we have the approvals now and we're about to go to bid. But to that point, it's another example of how we're trying to identify needs versus wants and starting in that fashion. And then when there's various needs identified, we're going back to those committees where there's a lot of community input to hear what they think the priorities are and working from there. So the board receives that input and then we hash out, do we agree completely? Do we want to tailor that a little bit differently? And that's how we're moving forward as far as our projects.
Okay. All right, well, I have one last question before I'm going to give you a chance at the end to just, if there's anything that you want to note or talk about that didn't come up that you'd like to raise, certainly give you the opportunity. But before I do that, number one, obviously want to thank you for participating with us today. Also want to thank you for 3 years of volunteer service on the Board of Education. So we appreciate, we know it is a volunteer gig with a significant time commitment, and we thank you for, that first term of service. Before I get into the final questions, if anyone is watching this and has a question for you or wants to reach out to you about your candidacy or things like that, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Regarding my candidacy and the things I believe in, they can refer to voteforvalin.com, voteforvalin, and I can also be emailed at voteforvalin@gmail.com.
Thank you. Okay. So the last question, there's obviously 5 candidates that are running for 3 seats. Are you, as part of your campaign or anything, are you supporting or endorsing any of the other candidates as part of your run in regards to the open seats?
I believe each candidate has something to offer. And I would just say that it's important that the board, I do value the boards I've been on because I think we have a balance about who we're hearing from as far as parents, non-parents, different areas geographically, different age levels in the schools. And I hope we retain that balance. It's also important to have a diversity of backgrounds. Some people with technical knowledge, some people with financial knowledge, some people with educational backgrounds, because not one of us is an expert in an area. And the more lenses and perspectives we have on different issues, the better solution we hope to be able to have in our role of oversight and policy. But no, at this time, I'm not specifically endorsing any one candidate over another.
Okay. Any final thoughts or things that you didn't get a chance to mention or talk about that you'd like to let the voters know before we wrap it up?
I feel like I should, and I'm sure when we hang up, I will have thought of something. But I'll be out and about.
Yep.
If anyone wants to email me, call me at 914-559-2321. I'd be happy to answer any questions or have a discussion. I should have an ending speech, but I don't.
It's okay. And if anyone wants to see more from Chris, you can go and watch the PTA put on an excellent candidates night. That was all the candidates together. That's on YouTube. If you just search for Greenberg Central Students PTA Candidates Night, you can see some more responses from Chris there. Chris, thank you for taking the time here to do this, and best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
No problem.